right now, I'm going to bring somebody very, very special to stage. She's incredible. Let me just tell you guys what she had to do to get here. So she's from Texas. She's got an amazing story, In Texas, I guess, she had some tornadoes yesterday and couldn't get on her flight. So we're like, oh no, this is such a great story for the audience. You're going to get so much value out of it. So she's like, all right, here's what I'm going to do. Gets in the car. I'm going to drive to Houston. I'm going to buy not one more plane ticket. I'm going to buy 2 more plane tickets, because if that one's not going to work, then I got another airport in another city. I'll go. She's like, I'm going to be there, Brandon. I'm going to be there. That's what give her a round of applause, right? So she went through a lot to get here, okay? She's been in the business for 1.5 years. This is her first full year in business, 2021, okay? She's got an incredible story. She's won multiple awards at her brokerage. She's sold right now. She'll finish at about 35 transactions, most of which are listings. Her first year in the business. Help me welcome to the stage Miss Kayla Fisher. I'm gonna move these. Come here, girl. What's up?
How are you?
How are you doing?
That's
the question.
I'm great.
So tell us, we're gonna have a seat here in just a second, but you got a flight finally.
Finally.
So you had some tornadoes. What city do you live in?
In Beaumont, Texas.
And they said, hey, Kayla, you're not gonna get on a flight today. Have a seat, welcome. We got some tornadoes, and you said, you know what? I'm gonna drive to Houston, correct?
Yes.
And you got on a flight and you made it
Yes,
here.
thankfully we did. Yeah, which we haven't had a tornado in Texas in 20 years. So just picked yesterday.
Unbelievable.
Well, outside of a hurricane, like there's tornadoes involved, but we usually know those are coming. So tornadoes were
But now you're here.
Yeah, we are.
So you have an incredible story that all these people are going to benefit from. I believe you're going to bring great inspiration to the people in the room. And so before we jump into this, I want to thank you for doing this and
thank you.
Being open to sharing your story with everybody.
Absolutely.
So tell us, so you've been in the business for about 1.5 years, right? Mm-hmm. What were you doing prior to getting into real estate?
So before I jumped into real estate, I owned restaurants. And I had 3 restaurants, a Starbucks, a nighttime dinner spot, a lunchtime spot, and then I owned a catering company, which is the primary source of our revenue at that time. So
nice.
That's what I did.
Very cool. So what happened with those that you said, I'm going to get into one of the hardest businesses in the world, and I'm going to go sell houses?
Well, the restaurant industry is pretty brutal.
It's true.
But I got divorced. It was a pretty hard transition for me. And then in that process of like really exploring like what my options were for me and my kids, and at the time my ex was and still isn't very stable, but he went to rehab, and so it was just, there was so many things in life that were very painful and dark, and it was just really a hard place to be. So I decided that I really did want to start over totally. I wanted a new career. I wanted something different. And I didn't know what that looked like, but I had a friend that suggested I do real estate. And at that time, I was kind of toying between teaching at a university that's local or doing real estate. I kind of pursued both at the same time just because I was a little scared. And then I closed the restaurants and jumped into real estate.
So this is a little off script, if you will, but I just looked at your hand. You got something sparkling at me. What happened?
Well, I keep wanting to say my boyfriend,
right?
But my fiance proposed last weekend.
Wow, give her. That's phenomenal. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So you had these restaurants, and you went through a very difficult time. You went through a divorce. Mm-hmm. You got into real estate for reasons we don't know why yet. I'm just kidding. You're crazy. I'm just kidding. So you get into real estate. Was it what you thought in the beginning, or what were the struggles? Because it wasn't like somebody just handed you this book of business and said, oh, you're going to be successful. You had to go out there and earn it. But were you from a financial position? Let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
It wasn't like you came into this business with like all this money in the bank, you could afford to buy a bunch of leads, and it wasn't like that at all, was it?
No,
What
not
was
at all.
that like financially? Because you lost the businesses, you were going through a divorce, and walk us through what that looked like.
Well, in the process of my divorce, like my divorce attorney was also a CPA, and it was one of the best things that I had done. I knew from the whole process that a bankruptcy was inevitable for me. There was no getting out of that, not just because of the financial exposure of closing restaurants, but also the legal tying of us having businesses together and like me moving forward and mitigating my risk in the future. The only way for me to totally cut ties with that was for me to file for bankruptcy. So I knew that was happening. And at the time, I hadn't quite filed yet, but for the divorce, not the divorce, for the bankruptcy. But at the time, I was closing a restaurant and COVID happened, and the entire world shuts down.
Sure.
And I was in no great position. I am so incredibly thankful for my amazing fiance that as much as, you ask why I went into real estate and how crazy that could be, but I'm not quite sure who would be like, this girl's getting a bankruptcy and a divorce and all the things, let's date her. There was so many things that I didn't know what was going to happen. But he really provided just any kind of emotional stability and financial stability to let me breathe.
Because when we first met, I remember you carried over some of the debt into your new business, correct? You didn't start clean, is that right?
No, I didn't. It wasn't until I started making money with real estate that I realized how successful I had the potential to be. And then I had to almost pump the brakes because I was like, I haven't filed for bankruptcy yet and I cannot make $200,000 a year and then go back and file for bankruptcy. It doesn't really work like that.
Yeah.
So,
right.
So I was like, before I start, pursuing something new, I had to finish like wiping the slate clean.
Yeah.
And so that involved bankruptcy. So I started, and then I filed for bankruptcy, and then I had to wait 90 days, 60 to 90 days before I could really get going.
Got it. So let's talk about your business, all right? So you start, and you come out of like a very painful time in your life, and you start a brand new business. Mm-hmm. How much business did you get from friends and family, right from the get-go? Did you get any?
Yeah, I did. I had like 3 or 4 transactions right out of the bat within 30 days to 60 days.
Yep.
I mean, one of them being my parents, so like I don't know.
Of
if
course,
that even
parents
counts.
have to support you, right?
But they did buy a house that, their first house in like 25 years. So like that happened. But I had a friend, and then I had another female in the community that also got divorced, and she, my divorce was pretty public in the area, just being a business owner. And then, and she was kind of going through the same thing, so she reached out. But that was it. Like friends, my parents, and another friend that's getting divorced.
So that's what I want to talk about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right there, because I think a lot of people out there right now are like, where's my next deal going to come from? How am I going? You had kids, right? You have kids, and it was all on you. Like you went through this divorce, and you're like, how am I going to provide for these kids? What were you thinking at the time when you went through the 2 or 3 deals out of the get-go, and you're like, how am I going to generate business? Like, how am I going to do this? And I think this was right before we started working together. Mm-hmm. But I want you to share with the audience what you were thinking at that point of like, how are you going to make this business work?
Well, I had a not so helpful broker, and I find this to be true of lots of brokers, is that they get all this business and they forget what it's like to be a new agent, because they have referrals coming in all the time, but they don't know what it's like to be a new agent. Even if you have a fantastic sphere like I did, or have your top 100's amazing, like you are constantly waiting on them. And so I knew that there were other, just because I was searching for some other lead generation, but the truth is I was so green even to sales,
Right.
that the term lead generation wasn't in my vocabulary. And so that was, like I would hear people be like, well, call a FSBO. And I'm like, what's a FSBO? Like, I swear I was that green to, and new agents especially don't even know the documents that their state requires,
Right.
much less how to lead generate or build a business plan, or that never happened until the program.
Let me ask you that.
Yeah.
So that's what's interesting to me is like, so many of us that come into business that way is like, we think the business is going to be one way, right? But it's completely different. For most people, they would agree with that, right? And so when you got into the business, was your mindset like, okay, it was just like the restaurant business. I'm going to build it and they're going to come. Did you like, I'm just getting my license and people are just going to reach out to me? And when was the moment where you're like, I have to make this happen? Like, how long were you in the business when you said, I got to figure this lead generation thing out?
I'll be honest, like, this is super personal, and I don't even know that I was at a place in my life that I knew what I was doing, but through the process of just like surrounding myself with people that were encouraging, including my family and my fiance and my kids, like, at some point I went from like a surviving mentality to like a thriving mentality. And that was probably my first 6 months, which was 2020. And like really just trying to like free myself of some of the baggage in my brain.
Sure.
And then I think somewhere in that first 6 months, I landed on a YouTube video of yours. And
You're the person that watches those.
yeah, which is so funny because I had never, it was like literally my first time to ever Google anything or watch a YouTube video. And like, you were the first person I found, which is insanely lucky because there's so many gimmick programs out there. But it was, so I called Ron I put in like my little thing and I got Ron called me and I was headed out for a hurricane at the time. I feel like weather is like insanely controlling my life these days. But I stumbled upon it. And then truly, you and your program were the way that I even understood what lead generation, and I was that green. I was that uneducated in what to do. I had never heard of an expired or a canceled or a cold call. My broker had never taught me that. But in the process of just being in the Facebook group and hearing other people talk about their broker and what they were doing, I realized that I needed a new broker.
Yeah.
I needed to, file for bankruptcy and finish that and like prepare myself. I needed the marketing materials. And so that was like a 3-month period of me like preparing myself for 2021. And so, and trying to move out from waiting on my sphere to
being in control.
Yes.
That's right. And so when we first started working together, I asked you to do a lot of things that probably made you feel, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but probably made you feel pretty uncomfortable. Like, get out there and proactively communicate with people every single day when you don't come from a direct sales background, right? So in the beginning, were you like, all right, let's do this? Or did you have some fear? Did you have some reservations that it wasn't going to work for you? Talk through that first, and then we'll kind of outline what your business looks like today.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously fear, but I had never picked up a phone and called a stranger in my life. So for me to cold call in general was just, everything was new. There was new, like when you asked in the business plan, like how many transactions do you want to do? I was like, I never did a business plan. I don't know how many I do. How much do you want to make? Like I had never, what kind of car do you want to drive? I don't, I'm just a car. It was, so that was a huge step for me. And then, I don't know, am I answering your question?
Yeah.
So like that was the fear of even, and when I say like my brain was like muddled down, it was just so muddled that to some degree, ignorance was bliss in like not knowing what to be scared of.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know what they were going to say when I picked the phone up and called them, because I'd never done that. But the fear of the unknown, but for me personally, fear of failing again.
Yeah.
Whether that be in a personal setting or a professional setting, like fear of failure was
very present.
Yeah,
And
and the lack of control. As I am super type A, so like I didn't have all my materials, or I don't know everything about my market, or I don't know what this document looks like. Like not knowing was a huge hindrance for me, of like not knowing what the end goal was. And I remember posting this in the group. I'm like, so what if I do all these calls and get all these listings? What's the end goal here? Like, how do I do this?
Yeah.
And I was kind of just, you know, I wasn't prioritizing my time. There's all kinds of things.
Sure.
So like it was the fear of failure and like not having all of the information was probably the most gripping things in even making the call.
Yeah. So let's fast forward, right? So we're heading towards the end of 2021. Okay, this is your first full year in business. You've been recognized, I don't know how many times, as one of the top agents at your brokerage. How much of your business right now is from listings sold versus buyers? And I know you emailed this to us, and I know, man, you're asking me about all my numbers, but do you remember roughly what you had on there?
Yeah, so I've done 31 transactions this year. I have 3.
Give a round of applause. That's first full year in real estate.
You know, like I'm a numbers person, so like when you asked for me to send my numbers over it, I like spent 5 hours analyzing my own numbers, going like,
She's an analytical.
Yeah. So like I've done 6.8 million in volume this year, and the thing that was like, and I really classified all of my business from whether or not it was a buyer or a seller. I would say I've had 21 listings and
Phenomenal.
9 buyers and 2 like little leases, which but those are from my sphere, and they're important people that I need to take care of. And then out of that though, even my buyers that I have had, like 75% of my buyers have come from listings from like what I consider a FSBO referral. So like I've had 12 listings from a cold call, and then outside of that, 75% of my total volume GCI and commission has come from either a FSBO or a FSBO referral.
That's phenomenal, and that has now represented well over 6 figures your first year in real estate, which is phenomenal. So when you look back, and if you had to start all over again, and for the newer real estate agents out here, there's this magic number out there. People want to earn 6 figures their first year, earn 6 figures their first year. You've been able to do it. You've been able to surpass that. What advice would you give to yourself starting over again, and for all of the newer agents out here that are just getting started?
Other than to find a therapist, because in any like new career, new industry, there is some kind of, by premise, you are in a transition, and you have so much that you're carrying with you, good, bad, and ugly, that will either make or break you. And like it is so hard to build a team, to build clients, to build a portfolio if you truly don't know who you are and what your strengths and your weaknesses is. Like the biggest thing that was keeping me from being successful was myself.
Oh, I love it.
And so when you can really know what that is, and like know who you are and what makes you avoid something because of your anxiety, or like when you know who that is, like you can tackle it a lot stronger. And so other than that, I would say like to find an amazing group of people, whether that be through the Facebook group, an accountability partner. Like Keith Zimmer is somebody that I 100% wouldn't be here without him. Tanya and even Ariel, she's here. Like these are all people from this group that changed my life and in the way that I approached business. But my broker, changing my broker, and then like I knew what I needed. Randy is an amazing broker who is so focused on the full balance of the human, which is what I need and what my family needs.
Yeah, I love
and
it.
so, but he's also very numbers driven.
Yeah.
So like he knows what you want. So like surrounding yourself with the people that you need to be successful is probably the most important thing. And then to learn the power of a cold call.
Yeah, I love it. Well, here's the thing. I mean, you've gone through some of life's toughest moments.
Right.
You've gone through a divorce, you lost your businesses, you were in some debt, and you got through it all. Sitting here on stage in front of all these beautiful people, telling your story. I cannot wait for the future for you. Thank you so much.
No
Let's give her a big
problem.
round of applause, you guys.